particularly in context of the hardware. Perhaps for the longest time we have been talking about that the app model is broken, so I'll just put myself on mute. The data retrieval is done. I just need to collate everything and then we'll talk about it. And particularly, I walk you through the application. First of all, we are going to focus on the tagging part because right tagging of anything and everything is very important from the standpoint view of having the right data set. And perhaps most of the communication based applications, particularly in India, the input data itself is wrong in terms of the candidates who are being part of the protocol and stating that, this is the particular address and this is a pin code, and the data set itself is being rigged. So any data set which is rigged, the AI is never going to work. AI is nothing but artificial intelligence, but we'll just wait for a couple of minutes and then we'll start. And till then, I'll put myself on mute. So we are going to talk about handheld devices. This is in continuation to the discussion. And perhaps right now we have two kind of handheld devices in the market. One is Android based, which is an operating system. Another one is um, the Apple one. We are working on another operating system, so that's where I put my time and everything. So it is working well in terms of the kind of modules we are building right now. But perhaps I'll walk you through the applications and the data set. Generally, the handheld device itself is called as anything which you can hold by hand is a device. So in many of these applications, particularly from the standpoint view of the building skeleton, it is also said as an electronic device. However, the world is moving to sustainability. And when we talk about sustainability, there has to be an equilibrium whereby perhaps a part of the system has to go carbon negative, and the part of the system should not be utilizing electricity the way it has been utilized over the years. And the part of the system is like getting into the hardware. So the need of the hour right now is to develop framework in the manufacturing. And manufacturing is just, I would say, an iota of stuff, because here we are amalgamating not only the offline world, which is manufacturing in the offline world where the infra is already there. Perhaps if I have to talk about the infra right now, the best infra for the not the development part. So R&D obviously takes a lot of money just in case of pharmaceutical industry. So we have a hashtag called as PharmaSafe. In a similar fashion, when we're talking about electronic devices, there is a lot of notion in terms of XYZ being developed in particular part of India. And let me tell you, the best thing is in last 10 years, maybe everything comes with its own pros and cons. In terms of the SWOT analysis, there's a lot of, I'm seeing a lot of people are now using the word SWOT even without understanding the meaning of SWOT. So SWOT is basically the strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And one thing which is not taught anywhere, it comes with experience, and it comes with experience of not only the college. College is just playing just a miniature role, because college gives you a framework of knowing your peers and developing those relationships. So school, colleges, and all these nuances, they are just or they have been orchestrated from the standpoint view of developing perhaps an opportunity to connect. That's what peer to peer is all about. But at the other end of the spectrum, there's a lot of things which have been developed in last 2 decades. One is definitely um, under the current leadership, we are seeing so many things, and we have to appreciate the fact that at least what didn't happen since independence of India is happening now, and that is not, it just happened overnight. It's happening because of the relentlessness and the acceptance of technology, because until unless technology is not accepted by the people who are the stakeholders, the country cannot move forward. At the same point of time, right now, a lot of infra is developed in terms of the incubation centers. In India itself, we have loads of high tech Viva. Hi. Um, so if you have any questions, you can put your questions. I'll be happy to answer those. So we are talking about there's a lot of infra already developed in terms of the incubation hubs. The problem statement right now is those incubation hubs are empty. And what is the need of the hour here is to have these MOUs between different universities and bridging the gap between the stakeholders, because the government somewhere has to give that, I would say, the torch of light to the capitalistic way of working. At the same point of time, one has to see the holistic view. Right now, a part of the stakeholders, they have no understanding or cognizance of what technology has already been done. I mean, 2016, 2017, when I was on stage, people were talking about, oh, AI is never going to come. I said, I've already worked on it. The frameworks I wrote way back somewhere from 2007 to 2001, it has to come. And today, right now, they are like, it is there. What to do next? Now the thing is, acceptance is the key. Key doesn't has any cognizance with this blockchain stuff, because blockchain itself is a very different portal. It's a very different mandate, because that is, if I have to talk about one of the modules of blockchain or the framework of blockchain, that is creating a nation where uh, internet can work wonders. When I talk about it, internet can work as wonders. That means there's no citizenship in terms of, whether whosoever is the individual, whether that individual comes from uh, United States, United Kingdom, and all that stuff. That particular part of the blockchain is already the folks have been selected in the world, and they have been given the physical coins. That matters more than the practicality of what we are seeing on Binance or any of these cryptocurrency stuff, because the use case studies are very important. Perhaps what is important here is the internet protocols which have been developed over the years. They are being rechurned, and a kind of circular economy is being built up. So let's focus on the aspect of the handheld device first, and then particularly let's see if anybody has some intellectual question. I'll be happy to answer. So first of all, we talked about this electronic device. Now, when you're talking about the framework doesn't mean that the literal meaning of the word. Electronic can mean anything and everything, but that doesn't mean that start giving the most bizarre things, because bizarre things don't come into picture, because some people, particularly this data set, comes where people are filing anything and everything before the patent offices and thinking that whatever they are thinking can be patented or can be designed. That doesn't happen. There has to be a logic. Everything works on a logic, and logic is not that the literal meaning of the logic. You need to see the historical data set with the factual stuff, and you need to appreciate the environmental data set. When this trinity works together, then only then some kind of use case study will happen, and that has to be reported to the authorities. An audit has to be done, and then only these things comes into pictures. Not that you write anything and everything and you think you become a coder. That doesn't happen. So in this particular stuff, I want to talk about the classifications, which are already well classified. This is basically G06F3 slash 0416. Null stands for the word zero. So null is basically a German word. So in this particular case, we have controller interface arrangement, which is adapted for digitizers. So digitizers is particularly, say for example, I have a name, say for example, It's not an hypothesis, it's just an example. Example can be anything and everything, because again people start coding anything and everything, which is like, it is so bizarre, because when you're copying something which has been created by someone without giving acknowledgement, that is infringement, and that infringement has already been coded on smart contracts. So for that you don't even have to go to the code. That is self, um, the determination steps are already written. It's in a loop, so there is no start, there is no stop, but it still works. That's the way smart contracts are supposed to work. So in this particular case, we talked about, so in digitizers is basically zero and ones. So how 32 byte or 64 byte can be, coded to achieve something. So the next is H04 or 3/12 circuit for transducers, loudspeakers, microphones for distributing signals to two or more loudspeakers. So I will talk about something which is interesting here. There's something called as G06F1/1656. This is basically adaptation of the enclosure. Enclosure can be a container, housing. That's how we write when we are, at least the best of the, good habits when you're drafting the framework. It has to be container. It has to be enclosure. Word I don't really appreciate in my legal language, but I really like, and I love the word housing. So this housing is basically to provide protection against the EMIs, shock, water, or host, detachable peripheral like a mouse, or removable expansion like PCM CIA cards, or provide access to internal components for maintenance, or to remove storage supports. Um, I don't know how many people know what CDs are all about. CDs and DVDs at one point of time. So whatever has already been done, it is being now converted into some kind of sustainability. Perhaps I've written this article. Let me just walk you through this.
बट अगर और भी एंटिटी आती हैं, जैसे दो तो पांच बोली हैं, बाकी अगर दो चार और आती हैं तो वो पांच पे तो करेंगे ना.
Okay. So how visual intelligence can be packaged or can be, put in a viewpoint whereby it is a good framework, because visual
ठीक है, sound good.
act of anything and everything would be there, whether consciously or subconsciously. So there's a lot of discussion, loads of books around consciousness and subconsciousness without even understanding what consciousness is all about. When we talk about visual intelligence, in this particular case, it is real-time object, and whatever event is particularly the movement of two or more objects. That's an event. That's what event is, and that's what the probability is also when we talk about the event and the probabilities, and if somebody knows how to play cards. Wire something which, I mean, if I get into the patenting language or the way we orchestrate, I'll just make it simple. There's some kind of focal point, which is a camera here, and which is suggesting to add events to the calendar. So there's calendar where you can put in your daydreaming and everything, which generally people do, or have some kind of, in school we used to have uh, what are the classes? What is it called? I'm not getting the word right now. Anyhow, forget it. Adding events to the calendar, which is supported with orchestrated modules and submodules, and perhaps one way of launching stuff is through share market, which is like NASDAQ. In India, we have BSE, NSE, and others. And the online world of another way is to develop a kind of a wallet framework like Binance and the others. I personally like Binance. And coming back to this point, how does on-device neural processing? So neural processing is again how these modules or submodules are working together in synchronicity, which are very well defined. Depending on the candidate, how the candidate is utilizing the handheld device, the neural network is learning at the back end. So there's always a network which is happening at the back end, which can be with the admin, and they can be multiple admins also. So earlier we talked about, I think maybe a week back, whereby we talked about there is no master. So there's no master, there's no slave. So we are actually taking out the master slave concept, and we are giving that power to the candidate of the handle device to dabble around it. And obviously there's a stop also. So whenever the neural network is able to detect that this is something which should not be shown to the candidate, the internet stops working. So internet doesn't work when certain determination steps are hit. Okay, in this um, okay, so when we talk about AR, that is augmented reality, VR, that is virtual reality, there's another thing, which a term which is IE. I stands for immersive and E stands for experience. What is the experience the candidate is getting or candidate is being provided with? A very good example could be these. For me, the one which still holds was the Transformer ride in Singapore. So one was obviously you have to wait for almost 3 hours. So it and was worth the wait. 3.5 hours. I didn't take the express pass, but the point was it was 8D, the infinity thing which people are talking about, and that was the immersive stuff. Right now, what we are seeing, in nearby um, theaters, which again can be converted in a manner. It's still in a very nascent stage because tech is not being utilized in the full format, and it should be. And the candidates should know what they're signing off for. And then the candidates should be selected based on certain parameters, which includes the health parameters also. So Osan says hi. Hi Osan. If you have any questions, happy to answer. So this is one thing. Then, so one of my papers talked about haptic. I'm from internet. I'm just from internet. I don't belong to any country or world. Okay. Here we are talking about the haptic feedback. So perhaps I talked about the haptic feedback. So if you just write the nomenclature of haptic feedback and my name, you will get loads of data sets. So um, the operating system nowadays are having a lot of haptic feedback for gestures, because when you're using these gestures, a lot of feedback loop is being generated, and that is used for the navigation purpose and for the gaming consoles. Um, One such example could be shock resistant haptic engine. Engine is nothing but modules and submodules, which improves the durability and responsiveness and gives a new user interface experience. Um, okay, this particular case, a lot of aesthetic is being introduced right now in the user interface. And when I talk about aesthetic, particularly in this one, we start with something else that was liquid crystal display. Then we have Omni and whatnot. Now we have this glass-like slab kind of appearance, which is actually um, constructed on multiple layers or multiple pieces, and the touch input. The touch input is basically and the graphical outputs. Uh, so the dimension is in 6D, so 6 sides, and it has peripheral edges. Let me tell you, when light passes through anything and everything, even a slight deviation is going to give you wonderful results. And that is why you have these um, cases against Apple versus Samsung, this versus that, because of the contouring and stuff. Even like I'm right now updating the iOS. Um, so for because light plays a very pivotal role. So the new edged UI based applications, which is basically the user interface interactions, right now are being developed for immersive virtual design. And particularly if I talk about, I personally believe that the best thing when once you know what the tagging of the classifications are, particularly from the standpoint of the frameworks developed by the best of the minds in the world that is available to be used. And if you use that, you can always utilize something which is already created for one of the sectors, and you take that sector and you put into another sector with the enhancement. And that is what housing means. And that is what manufacturing has to be. It's not just the assembly lines. Assembly, definitely, because China, we have to give it to China. I mean, there's no question asked about it. I have seen it myself, the development which was done in just in 365. I mean, oh my goodness. I was not even mesmerized. I was like, it was looking like a La La Land kind of a situation. Um, so this is something I wanted to discuss. And anything else I would like to discuss? Let me see. So I was asked this question today on one of the platforms. I'll try and answer that. Um, Given the scheme of things or the alignment of the events which are happening globally, how intellectual property can be robust? The very simple answer is trade secret. There's no other secret sauce for it. How you keep your main stuff trade secret, still able to develop a robust whatever you wish to in terms of running the units or a sector, that would be important. And for that, the basic framework would be to have, I would say, zillion contracts. Zillion contracts, zillion agreements, you need to sign those so that each and every clause is very well defined and there is no ounce of doubt in terms of what if this happens and you did this, you did that. Because dispute resolution clause, though it seems very miniature in the beginning when you're signing it, but when these situationships and these scenarios, these events arise, that is where those loopholes are. So you need to cover those holes first and build in a term of circular economy, understand from the terminology of circular economy, and then only bring those folks on one table. You cannot serve anyone and everyone. That era is over where you have to bring people online and they are going to be the candidates for that particular application. No, now the time is apt whereby you have to be very selective, and the power to say no would be the main mantra to take things forward in terms of building better products, better interfaces, solving real problems, which is particularly the uh, problem statement right now, the menace which has already happened because of the hallucinated data set of what people live in, whereby they think that it is not important to separate wet waste, dry waste, and the government has to take pivotal roles. It's not that money is going to, or penalizing somebody is going to solve the problem. The answer is big no. It has to be the other way around, whereby the citizens of the country should be given some kind of reward just to segregate the dustbins into multiple layers, and as far as possible uh, the distribution of the garbage has to be done not by just signing off, and all these stakeholders, they come on roads, they do it for one day and it's done and dusted. There's so much landfill, whether you talk about any of the state. I mean, the kind of landfills I've seen, just, I've not traveled 30 states in the country, but wherever I've seen, it is detrimental. I mean, maybe wherever the control environment is, it is neat and clean. What about the neighborhood? So that kind of cleanliness is next to godliness. That has to be not only orchestrated but implanted in the human brain so that they're able to understand and work on it, because we are at SOS as far as nature is concerned. So it's not that money is needed, it is the intent. People have money, everything is there. It's not the intent, because uh, bottles are not discarded properly, and water is not only being provided to the citizens. So questions have to be raised. Technology has to be deployed. That is through licensing rather than developing your own technologies. We don't have that much of time where we can copy and develop technology and go for infringement and all that stuff, rather than put your energy in saving the environment by licensing. Take a fixed fee. It's very simple. There's no jargons into it, but yes, have good lawyers on your side. Good means good. It's not that they have to come from particular college or their learning capacity is high. They need to understand what they're getting into, because then they become part of the framework. If you don't have good people on board, you're never going to succeed. Maybe in short term you'll succeed, but in long term it'll hamper your progress. Thank you for watching this out. Have a great, I would say it's almost a weekend kind of a situation now, because when you're working 24 cross 7 or whatever, 24, whatever the numbers is, um, time seems to kind of a myth. So thank you for watching this out, and you can always send DMs and we can take things forward from there. Have a great week ahead.